Part 1. The first lie you believed. What if everything you believed about yourself, your morals, your values, your sense of identity was never truly yours? What if the core of who you think you are is nothing more than a reflection of what you were taught to be? This is where Nietzsche begins, not with comfort, but with confrontation. He doesn't ease us into truth, he throws us into the fire. His philosophy opens with a disturbing premise: you were lied to. Not maliciously, but systematically. From birth, society handed you a script. It told you what was good, what was bad, what was acceptable, what was shameful. And you believed it because everyone else did. Because questioning it would mean standing alone. But Nietzsche insists that if you truly want to live, not just exist, you must have the courage to tear that script apart, to question the foundations of your values. He believed most people mistake inheritance for authenticity. They confuse obedience with virtue. They cling to beliefs, not because they are true, but because they are familiar. And in doing so, they never become who they are. They only become what others expect them to be. This is the first illusion Nietzsche demands we destroy: the belief that your identity is fixed, sacred, or self-determined. In truth, it was crafted by culture, shaped by religion, and enforced by fear. But once you recognize this, you face a terrifying choice. Do you continue living comfortably within the lie? Or do you begin the painful process of self-examination? Nietzsche offers no easy answer. He offers a mirror. And in that mirror, you don't see who you were told to be. You see the blank slate of possibility, the terrifying, beautiful truth that you must now choose who you are. Not once, but every day. And no one can do it for you. Part 2. The Invention of Morality. Once you begin to question who you are, the next truth Nietzsche demands you confront is this: the morality you were raised to believe in: good versus evil, right versus wrong, is not eternal, not universal, and certainly not objective. It was invented. And like all inventions, it had a purpose. But that purpose was not your liberation. It was your control. Nietzsche called this construct slave morality, a value system created not by the strong, but by the weak, by those who lacked power, and so redefined their weakness as virtue. Humility became holiness. Obedience became righteousness. Suffering became sacred. To Nietzsche, this wasn't a coincidence. It was a survival tactic. The powerless, unable to conquer, instead declared conquest evil. They couldn't rise above, so they pulled everything down to their level. They demonized strength and sanctified submission. And over time, what began as resentment solidified into doctrine. This morality became so deeply ingrained that people forgot it had ever been questioned. They called it divine. They called it natural. But Nietzsche called it what it was: a strategy. And once it served its purpose, it calcified into a cage. This is why Nietzsche distrusted inherited virtue. Because what society called good often meant harmless, and what it called evil often meant independent. He believed that morality, as commonly practiced, was less about justice and more about fear of individuality, fear of difference, fear of power. And so, society praised sameness and punished deviation. But at what cost? In protecting itself from chaos, it suppressed genius. In rewarding obedience, it buried the will to create. So Nietzsche asks, is your morality truly yours? Or was it designed to make you easier to manage? Are your values expressions of your highest self, or echoes of a system that never wanted you to rise? Until you can answer that honestly, freedom remains an illusion. Never will? Part 3. The Herd and the Cave. After dismantling the illusion of morality, Nietzsche turns to a more familiar prison one that most people never realize they're trapped inside. It's not built of walls or chains. It's made of people. Of family, friends, teachers, neighbors, the invisible force Nietzsche called the herd. Society, in its broadest sense, doesn't need to punish rebellion. It simply teaches you to fear standing alone. It rewards conformity not with love, but with belonging. And in a world where exclusion feels like death, Most people would rather betray themselves than face the silence of solitude. Nietzsche saw this as the root sickness of modern life. Not that we are forced to conform, but that we choose to. We self-police. We silence our own thoughts before others can. We edit ourselves in real time to be more acceptable, more palatable, more ordinary. And we call this maturity. But to Nietzsche, it was cowardice dressed in social grace. The herd doesn't care about truth. It cares about comfort. And it will destroy anyone who threatens that comfort with a dangerous idea or an untamed spirit. This is where Nietzsche's philosophy becomes dangerous, not because it promotes violence, but because it demands disobedience. He dares you to ask, who would you be if you weren't afraid of judgment? If no one was watching, would you make the same choices? Or have you spent your life trying to be someone that others would approve of? The herd offers safety, but at a cost. You lose the edge that makes you distinct. You trade your inner fire for external validation. Nietzsche believed that those who live this way never truly live at all. They exist in a well-decorated cage, fed by praise and dulled by routine. But comfort is not freedom, and belonging is not identity. Until you're willing to step outside the herd, your life isn't yours. It's theirs. Part 4: God is dead, but why it matters. Perhaps Nietzsche's most infamous words, "God is dead," are also his most misunderstood. He wasn't speaking with mockery or triumph. He was speaking with grief. It wasn't the death of a deity he mourned, but the collapse of a moral structure that had held the Western world together for centuries. When Nietzsche declared God dead, he was holding up a mirror to a society that no longer truly believed in the absolutes it claimed to uphold. Religion had become ritual. Faith had become habit. And the sacred had become hollow. The death of God wasn't an act of rebellion. It was a recognition of decay. The foundation had rotted, yet people continued to build upon it, pretending it could still support the weight of meaning. But Nietzsche warned, without a divine lawgiver, without a cosmic order, without a guaranteed source of truth, what now defines right and wrong? What replaces the commandments when the voice behind them falls silent? This is the abyss. Nietzsche saw humanity approaching a void left behind by the collapse of inherited belief. And he knew that most people wouldn't respond with courage, but with despair. When you take away their moral compass, their spiritual comfort, and their existential roadmap, they panic. They fall into nihilism, believing that if the old values are false, then no values can be true. But Nietzsche didn't see this as the end. He saw it as a beginning. The death of God was not a destruction for its own sake. It was a necessary clearing, a space in which something new could be built, not handed down from above, but forged from within. But this required something terrifying: personal responsibility. In a godless world, there is no fallback, no judgment, no redemption. Only you, your choices, your meaning, and your courage to carry it. Part 5: The Birth of the Overman. Out of the ruins of collapsed belief, Nietzsche offers not despair, but evolution. Not the slow biological kind, but a fierce personal metamorphosis. This is where the Bermensch is born, the Overman, the one who rises beyond the death of God, beyond herd morality, beyond the self-imposed limitations of man. The Overman isn't a fantasy of perfection. He is a reality forged in fire. Not someone who avoids suffering, but one who embraces it, transforms it, and uses it as fuel to create something higher. The Overman doesn't inherit meaning. He invents it. He doesn't follow rules. He writes them. His values aren't borrowed, they emerge from within, sculpted by pain, shaped by struggle, and anchored in radical self-honesty. Nietzsche saw most people as being too afraid to reach this state. They crave security, not transformation. They would rather be liked than be true. The Overman chooses truth, even if it isolates him, even if it costs him everything. He walks alone not because he rejects love, but because he refuses to be owned by it. He doesn't seek approval, because his worth is not determined by others. He acts, not reacts. He leads, not follows. He does not pray for meaning, he imposes it upon the chaos of existence. This is not arrogance. It's authorship. To Nietzsche, the Overman is not some mythic superhero. He is a direction, a possibility, a destination for those brave enough to discard the comforting lies of the past and face the world naked, exposed, and responsible. Most will never get there. Most will retreat into dogma or disappear into the crowd. But for those who accept the challenge, the Overman becomes a beacon not of superiority, but of self-mastery. Because in a world where the old gods have died, the only divine thing left is what you choose to become. Part 6. The Abyss of Total Freedom. Freedom sounds beautiful until you understand what it truly demands. When the structures of belief collapse, when morality no longer comes from above, when the herd no longer tells you who to be, you're left with something most people fear more than control: total responsibility. No more commandments. No more sacred rules. Just the terrifying blank canvas of possibility. And Nietzsche knew exactly how heavy that canvas could feel. Without inherited meaning, you are forced to create your own. But creation is hard. It requires vision. It requires courage. It requires solitude. And most of all, it requires that you stop blaming anything outside of yourself for the way your life is unfolding. There is no more they. No more should. Only you. And that weight, Nietzsche believed, crushes most people. Because they'd rather be told what to do than face the anxiety of choosing for themselves. This is what Nietzsche called the abyss, a vast, open space where no rules apply. It is filled not with darkness, but with silence. A silence so complete it forces you to hear your own voice for the first time. And in that voice, you hear not certainty, but doubt. You realize that freedom is not about doing whatever you want, it's about knowing what you want. And that is a much harder question. This is why most people flee back to the herd. They call it community, but it's really escape. They crave boundaries, even if those boundaries suffocate them. Because boundaries mean safety, and safety means someone else is responsible. But Nietzsche warned that this trade kills the soul. Because in trying to escape the weight of freedom, you surrender the chance to become who you are. So ask yourself, can you live without a script? Can you face the abyss and write your own code in the dark? If not, freedom is just another word you use to decorate your cage. Part 7, Eternal Recurrence. Would you live this life again? Imagine this. Every moment of your life, every decision, every triumph, every mistake, every regret must be lived again and again, exactly as it happened, for all eternity. No edits. No improvements. Just you, trapped in a perfect loop of repetition. This is Nietzsche's most haunting thought experiment, eternal recurrence. Not meant as a literal truth, but as a psychological test, a mirror that asks one terrifying question: are you living a life you would be willing to repeat forever? Most people recoil at the idea. They think of their missed chances, their silent compromises, their unspoken dreams. If you were forced to relive today and tomorrow and every tomorrow after that without change, would you feel pride or dread? Nietzsche believed that your answer to this question reveals everything about how authentically you're living. If the thought horrifies you, it may mean you're still waiting. Waiting for the right time, the right version of yourself, the perfect conditions that never come. But what if there is no next time? What if this is all there is? Nietzsche forces you to confront the possibility that you're postponing your life not because you're busy, but because you're afraid. Afraid to risk, afraid to fail, afraid to step out of the role the world has scripted for you. And so your days blur together, not because life is meaningless, but because you've refused to give it meaning. Eternal recurrence is not a curse. It's a challenge to live so deliberately, so intensely, that even if life repeated endlessly, you would not change a thing. It's not about perfection, it's about presence. About living with such truth that even your pain feels sacred. Because if you wouldn't choose to live your life again, then maybe you haven't really lived it yet. Part 8, the artist, the warrior, and the creator. In a world stripped of inherited meaning, Nietzsche didn't mourn the emptiness, he celebrated the space. Because from that space, something remarkable could emerge: the human being as a creator, not a consumer of meaning. And for him, the greatest expressions of this creative force were found in three figures: the artist, the warrior, and the philosopher-creator. Not roles defined by profession, but by attitude. These were the people who refused to be defined by the world, and instead reshaped the world to reflect their vision. The artist does not merely paint or compose, he dares to bring something new into being. He imposes form on chaos, beauty on despair. He takes what others call broken and makes it unforgettable. The warrior is not one who seeks battle for its own sake, but who confronts life with fierce responsibility. He doesn't flee from suffering, he charges into it, knowing that struggle is the path to self-respect. The creator, perhaps the rarest of all, is the one who goes even deeper. He creates values. He rewrites morality not for society, but for himself. He does not need commandments because he has principles carved from lived experience. These archetypes share something vital. They refuse to let life happen to them. They refuse to be passengers. They act. They assert. They say yes to life, not because it's easy, but because it's theirs. Nietzsche admired them not for their outcomes, but for their stance, for their courage to live without guarantees, to build without blueprints, to suffer without certainty. Most people fear this level of authorship. It is easier to quote wisdom than to embody it. Easier to follow rules than to make them. But Nietzsche asks, who will you be when the scripts run out? A spectator or a sculptor? Because if you don't become the creator of your life, someone else already has. Part 9, The Enemy Within. By now, the path Nietzsche lays before us is clear, but it is far from easy. Because even after shedding inherited beliefs, escaping the herd, and accepting the burden of self-authorship, one final obstacle remains: yourself. Not the external you, the polished mask you show the world, but the version within. The one that doubts, delays, and self-sabotages. Nietzsche believed the greatest struggle is not against others or fate, or even death. It is the silent war you wage against your own fear of becoming. This internal resistance wears many disguises. Comfort masquerades as wisdom. Procrastination cloaks itself as patience. Fear hides beneath the name of caution. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, you begin to betray the future self you could have become. Nietzsche saw this as the greatest tragedy, not that people suffer, but that they waste the suffering. They endure pain, but never use it. They hurt, but never transform. He believed that to truly evolve, you must be willing to destroy yourself not physically, but psychologically. You must kill the version of you that clings to safety, to identity, to the past. Just as a snake must shed its skin or suffocate within it, you too must let go of who you were in order to rise into who you could be. And this is not a one-time event. It is a continuous process of shedding, confronting, breaking, and rebuilding. Over and over. Most people won't do it. They choose stagnation disguised as stability. But Nietzsche didn't write for most people. He wrote for the few who would rather burn than rust. For those who know that self-overcoming is not an achievement, it is a way of life. Because the final enemy is never outside of you. It is the voice within that says, you can't, you shouldn't, it's too late. And the only way to silence it is to prove it wrong. Part 10, No One is Coming, and that's the good news. After tearing down illusions, confronting the abyss, and battling the self, Nietzsche leaves us with one final brutal truth. No one is coming to save you. Not God. Not society. Not philosophy. Not even Nietzsche himself. There is no external force that will bestow meaning upon your life. And that's not a curse, it's a gift. Because once you accept that nothing is guaranteed, you are free to claim everything. No more waiting. No more permission. Just the raw, terrifying power of responsibility. Most people spend their lives in quiet hope, hoping that something will change, that someone will show them the way, that meaning will descend from above and organize the chaos. But Nietzsche saw this hope as the final illusion. It is seductive, yes, but it's also paralyzing. It convinces you to wait when you should move. to follow when you should lead, to believe when you should create. To live fully, Nietzsche argued, is to reject that hope not out of cynicism, but out of strength. Because when you finally stop waiting to be saved, you begin to live like a creator, not a consumer. You stop asking, what is the purpose of life? And start answering, what purpose will I give it? That shift subtle but seismic changes everything. It means your failures are yours, but so are your victories. It means you can no longer blame fate or society or circumstance because you've claimed ownership. It means you become the meaning maker, the path builder, the fire starter. And in a world that constantly offers distractions, escapes, and ready-made identities, this kind of ownership is revolutionary. Nietzsche doesn't offer comfort. He offers power. Not the power to control others, but the power to shape yourself. The power to rise again and again until what you are reflects what you could be. So the question isn't whether someone will come to save you. The question is, what will you do now that you know they